This is the 7th generation American Standard Cadet toilet, or the 1.6 gallon Cadet. This toilet was introduced sometime in the late 1990s, I'd say around circa 1998 or 99, and would be made up until circa 2010 or 11. Now originally this was the last version of the original Cadet, however recently they brought back the Cadet lineup for its 8th generation in 2024. It's totally not just a Cadet Pro again, guys. Now this toilet is quite infamous. Some people love it, some people hate it. And I don't get the love part, because this has got to be one of the most inconsistent messes I've ever seen. So let's take a look at it and see what went wrong. The overall design of this toilet honestly isn't too bad. The base looks kind of weird from a side, but I do like the tank design. It looks quite nice. The trapway opening is a rectangle, with a suffragette towards the bottom. The tank parts are pretty standard. You got a regular handle, a regular flapper, and a regular fill valve. Now this looks like a fluid master, but it's branded American Standard, as you can see. The tank parts are pretty standard, but they can be interchanged, which I do like. Let's have a look at a flush. Honestly, the flushes are okay, but they are very inconsistent. Let me explain why. A lot of these 1.6 Cadets were exported or made elsewhere. Either places like the US, Mexico, Brazil, Guatemala. They're all over the place, and the quality control is very inconsistent. Sometimes the flushes are a lot different, sometimes they're faster, sometimes they're shorter, sometimes they double flush, sometimes they don't even flush out at all. Like, I've never seen a toilet this inconsistent with its quality control. Let me just show you how inconsistent the flushes are. Not to mention that the trapway opening designs as well as performances are also very inconsistent between each version. Like, it's all over the place. Now for the pulling and siphon powers of these toilets. They're pretty mixed. Generally speaking, they seem okay, but sometimes some of these don't even flush out properly, which is a big problem. It makes them very inconsistent. The performances are also all over the place. Sometimes they perform okay, other times they clog on a single sheet of toilet paper. Like, I'm not even being sarcastic. They are like that all the time, and it's very inconsistent. But most of the time these perform like crap. This mostly has to go with the trapway design. While it is considered 2-inch trapway, the opening is very small and tight, and the passages, well, they look like this. Not a great design. Let's have a look at Bowen's now. Yeah, while it does look okay, the bowl rinse is pretty bad. This mainly has to do with the application of the rim jets as well as some wide gaps. While it is angled, some areas are just not covered very well, so the bowl rinse really isn't that good. And that is the 7th generation American Standard Cadet toilet. A very inconsistent mess. I do not like these at all. They are all over the place and are very inconsistent. It's literally a mixed bag, and not in the best way. In fact, it's in the worst way. Never understood the hype of this toilet and never will. But let's put this toilet into the grading scale. Let's grade it.
I actually really like the overall design of this toilet, mostly with the tank design being quite nice. The side of the ball does look kind of weird, but you do get kind of used to it after a little bit. Overall, I get the design a 7. The tank parts are pretty simple, but they're pretty easy to work with and can be interchanged at any time. Not to mention that they work fairly well, so I get the parts a 7. Okay, we gotta talk about the quality control problem because it's a big problem with this toilet. Now I will mention that quality control has been dipping since the 1980s for American Standard. This is mostly because they were starting to import some of their toilets from other countries. While their toilets are usually made in the US, you can also get their toilets from Mexico or even Brazil. With the 1.6 Cadet, you can get this toilet from all over. The US, Mexico, Brazil, Guatemala, etc. These imports were all over the place. The biggest problem is that the quality control is probably the messiest on this toilet. Every single aspect is inconsistent. The flushes, you either get one that flushes fast or you get one that flushes slow. Sometimes they siphon out twice, sometimes they don't even siphon out at all. Sometimes you'll get one that has decent bowl rinse, sometimes you'll get one that has bad bowl rinse. Sometimes you'll get one that performs pretty well, and then you get a pretty bad one that clogs on every single thing. It is crazy to see how all over the place the quality control is, and it's such a gigantic mess. That's why quality control is easily getting a 2. The trapway passages don't look super nightmarish compared to something like the 1.6 plebe or 1.6 colony of the time, but the trapway opening is probably the biggest problem. It's just super tight and small. The trapway is supposedly 2 inches, but it definitely doesn't look like it. I'm giving the trapway a 4. So the flush in theory seems okay. Nothing remarkable, but nothing too terrible. Then you add in the fact that the quality control sucks, and there's the problem. Sometimes these things flush out fine, sometimes they double flush, sometimes they don't even flush out at all. That's kind of a problem. Considering the inconsistent flushes these have, I'm docking it down to a 5. The pulling factor is implemented in the flushes most of the time, and the siphons are pretty long. Again, the biggest problem is that they're very inconsistent. Sometimes they're short, sometimes they double flush, sometimes they don't even flush out at all. Considering that factor, I'm going to have to bring it down to a 4. Even when it does function well, it's still pretty mixed with the pulling and siphon power despite it looking pretty decent. It's kind of disappointing if you think about it. Now we gotta talk about performance. Like every other aspect, it's all over the place. Sometimes you'll get one that performs decently well, sometimes you get one that clogs on literally everything. But generally speaking, the performances are absolute crap. Combine the poor trapway design with poor quality control, yeah, it's easy to see why these things are constantly clogged. I find it funny how when testing these I've clogged several of these, meanwhile I never clogged anything like a first generation Gerber Aqua Saber, which has a ridiculously tiny trapway, mind you. Can someone explain how that's physically possible? Either way, the performances overall are absolute crap, and not to mention very inconsistent. That's why I'm giving it a 3. The bowl rinse is shockingly bad, which is funny considering that it does have angled rim jets. But again, quality control seems to be the biggest problem. Sometimes it seems like it does okay, other times you'll get ones that don't have functioning rim jets. You could argue that it could be mineral buildup, or as I like to mention, poor quality control. It's kind of strange that this thing has bad bowl rinse, but another theory is that maybe the application of the rim jets is not the best. Either way, bowl rinse is getting a 4. Yeah, it's easy to see why these things are going away ever so slowly. The quality control is just an absolute mess. Not to mention poor design choices also play a part in this as well. That's why the survivability is getting a 4. Now let's talk about the overall value of the 1.6 Cadet. I think out of all the toilets, this has to have some of the worst quality control I've ever seen. And I've seen my fair share of crappy quality control from other toilets. The problem is that you combine a badly designed trapway passage with poor quality control, it's just going to be a mess every time, even if you somehow do get lucky. Every factor from the flush, to performance, to bowl rinse, it's all over the place. Each toilet is going to be different from one another, and that's not a good thing. Even if you ignore the quality control issues, it's still a badly designed toilet. It was already bad enough, but the quality control made it even worse. That's why it's getting a 3 in value. The final score of the 7th generation American Standard Cadet, or the 1.6 gallon Cadet, is a 43 out of 100. What a mess of a toilet this is. Even if you ignore the problems of the poor quality control being outrageously horrible, it's still a poorly designed toilet overall. I frankly doubt that anything would save this model.